I'm not exactly sure why God is drawing my attention to this today, because there are actually other things I'm asking him about, but he has, and so I want to talk about it. I want to talk about Joel 1 and 2. A couple years back, someone had contacted me and asked me about this doctrine of the season of locusts, and there is no such doctrine in the Word. This is something that clearly someone coined a term and decided to drum up a doctrine about it, and that's what they were asking me about. So I've told you many times that if you want to understand what God has written in his word, you got to use his language. You can't be using human language, human concepts, human terms, and then expect God to testify to that. It doesn't make sense. Another way of saying that is what Jesus said in the book of John: those who speak on their own authority do so for their own glory. Those who speak on the authority of the one who sent them is a person of truth. So just speak on the authority of the one who sent you, and you're going to understand truth. Don't be using words like rapture. Resurrection is used 52 times in the word. Rapture is never used in the word, and people who use that language have to go through this entire detour of doctrine in order to justify the language that they're using. And at the end of the day, it's not even correct. Resurrection means to come to life. In Daniel 12, it says, multitudes who sleep in the dust are going to are going to come to life, some to condemnation and some to eternal life. Resurrection does not mean that you're meeting Christ in the sky. I know a lot of people think that. I thought it at one time because that's how I was taught, but nope, turns out that's not what resurrection means. Resurrection just means come to life. The language used in Revelation is that those who share in the first resurrection, those are the ones who are meeting Christ in the sky. Now, when people use rapture, they have to go through all of this detour, as I'm saying, a detour in Scripture, and at the end of the day, they don't even use the word correctly. So they talk about rapture, and then they say, well, it's like the word harpazo in Greek. Okay, harpazo in Greek means caught up. That's not even resurrection. What does resurrection mean? What did I just tell you? It means come to life. Harpazo is used twice in Scripture. Why? Why? That's all I'm going to say is why. Use God's language. Let's go to Joel 1. The word of the Lord that came to Joel, son of Pethuel. Hear this, you elders. Listen, all who live in the land. Okay, when he's talking about living in the land, he's talking about his people. Has anything like this ever happened in your days or in the days of your ancestors? Tell it to your children, and let your children tell it to their children, and their children tell it to the next generation. What the locust swarm has left, the great locusts have eaten. What the great locusts have left, the young locusts have eaten. What the young locusts have left, other locusts have eaten. What's he describing there? He's describing that the locusts have essentially destroyed the land. Like, what was left was then eaten by other locusts, and then what was left of that was then eaten by other locusts. He's describing complete and total destruction. Wake up, you drunkards, and weep. Wail, all you drinkers of wine. Wail because of the new wine, for it has been snatched from your lips. A nation has invaded my land. Okay, so this is going to be important because we're going to distinguish between the locusts that are being described in Joel 1 versus the locusts that are described in Joel 2. A nation has invaded my land, a mighty army without number. It has the teeth of a lion, the fangs of a lioness. It has laid waste my vines and ruined my fig trees. It has stripped off their bark and thrown it away, leaving their branches white. Okay, so it has attacked his people. By the way, the same description is going to be seen in Revelation 9. The description of having the teeth of a lion and the fangs of a lioness. Let's just think about this for a minute. The teeth of a lion and the fangs of a lioness, so it's devouring. And also, you see elsewhere in Scripture how God talks about people roaring at him, rebellious people who were supposed to be his. They roar at him, therefore he hates her. So we're going to read Revelation 9, but I just want to show you, in verse 7 it says, the locusts look like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer. Okay, so we have the 2 clues right there of him using locusts, which doesn't necessarily mean anything. He's used locusts to talk about different armies. It doesn't have to be the same army. And he's also used the description of the teeth of a lion and the fangs of a lioness. But he's telling us that this army in Joel 1 is going after his people. It has laid waste my vines and ruined my fig trees. It's stripped off their bark and thrown it away, leaving their branches white. Mourn like a virgin in sackcloth, grieving for the betrothed of her youth. Grain offerings and drink offerings are cut off from the house of the Lord. The priests are in mourning, those who minister before the Lord. The fields are ruined, the ground is dried up, the grain is destroyed, the new wine is dried up, the olive oil fails. Despair, you farmers, wail, you vine growers, grieve for the wheat and barley, because the harvest of the field is destroyed. By the way, he also tells us in Amos that a famine is coming, not a famine of bread or water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. In Revelation 6, we talked about how they are coveting the olive oil, the bread, and the wine. And so, as we're looking forward to what the prophets have spoken of, it doesn't negate what God has established as far as what famine is. But as we're looking forward, we know that what God has talked about, what he's talked about in terms of bread, olive oil, and wine, has to do with doctrine. And that's where his heart is. That's what's most important to him. Food is one thing, but spiritual food is an entirely different thing. This is what matters to God. And if you think about the salience of this, that food, literal food provides sustenance for your body. And so if you don't have it, your body is going to perish. But spiritual food provides sustenance for your soul. Which is more important? Your soul perishing or your body perishing? God has already told you, don't be worried about those who kill the body. Be concerned about the one who can kill both soul and body in hell. Despair, you farmers, wail, you vine growers, grieve for the wheat and barley, because the harvest of the field is destroyed. The vine is dried up and the fig tree is withered, the pomegranate, the palm, and the apple tree, and all the trees of the field are dried up. Surely the people's joy is withered away. Put on sackcloth, you priests, and mourn. Wail, you who minister before the altar. Come, spend the night in sackcloth, you who minister before my God. For the grain offerings and drink offerings are withheld from the house of your God. Declare a holy fast, call a sacred assembly, summon the elders and all who live in the land, to the house of the Lord your God, and cry out to the Lord. Alas for that day, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come like destruction from the Almighty. Has not the food been cut off before our very eyes, joy and gladness from the house of our God? The seeds are shriveled beneath the clods, the storehouses are in ruins, the granaries have been broken down, for the grain is dried up. How the cattle moan, the herds mill about, they have no pasture. Even the flocks of sheep are suffering. To you, Lord, I call, for fire has devoured the pastures in the wilderness, and flames have burned up all the trees of the field. Even the wild animals pant for you. The streams of water have dried up, and the fire has devoured the pastures in the wilderness. Now, a lot of this language, by the way, like flames have burned up the trees of the field. This language is also used in Revelation, and particularly in Revelation 8, when he starts blowing the trumpets. But in Ezekiel 9, when you see that the multitude in white robes, those who are being sealed before the first 6 trumpets, or the first 6 men with the weapon in their hands start harming, you can see that what is happening is that people are being killed, not physically, spiritually. And so we know that what is being described in Revelation 8 is actually symbolic, and that we have been likened to trees and to land and to grass and powers that be within, the teachers and priests, so-called priests, they have been likened to the mountains of Israel. So when you're reading Revelation 8, you should not assume that you're going to see these things in the physical. You should understand that they are spiritually represented. And so if they are spiritually represented, then when you're reading the prophets, should you not also understand that what the prophets are saying is also spiritually represented, that God established something in the concrete, in the natural, in order to help you understand spiritual things, and he's not going backward, he's going forward. Now, this chapter has described something that has been brought on his people and that they've been trampled on, as he says in Revelation 11, that the Gentiles are going to trample on the outer courts of the temple. There actually is a different army here of locusts being described in Joel 2. Blow the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm on my holy hill. Let all who live in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, it is close at hand. A day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness. Like dawn spreading across the mountains, a large and mighty army comes, such as never was in ancient times, nor will be in ages to come. Now you have to have a little understanding of end times and the timeline of the Antichrist reign versus the time of great distress, the great tribulation that has not happened, that God has not brought on the world since the beginning of the world until now. And Jesus said in the book of Matthew that this happens after the Antichrist reign, when the abomination of desolation has been set up on the 1290th day, as spoken of by Daniel. And in Daniel, or technically spoken of by Jesus to Daniel in Daniel 12. In Daniel 12, it says that this is going to occur on the 1290th day, and blessed is the one who reaches 1335 days. That 45-day period is the great distress or the great tribulation. During this time, Jesus comes like a thief. He's not coming like a thief for the rapture, okay? He's not coming like a thief for resurrection. When he comes for the resurrection, he says, come up here. Is that how, does a thief just seduce you or something? What is so frequently being used to describe the resurrection, one will be taken, another left, is not describing the resurrection at all. No one's going to be taken in the resurrection. They're going to go into the clouds. That's not taken, they're gathered. A thief takes. And in the book of Revelation, Jesus warns about the thief taking. And in the Gospels, he warns about it too. He says if the master of the house had known at what time the thief was coming, he would have kept watch. This is a correction. It's a rebuke. It's not a, come up here and join me. So here in the Great Tribulation, in the time of great distress, this is not the army that has over it the king of, or the angel of the abyss, who has as king over it, the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer. That's a different army. That's the army of the Antichrist. And specifically, that is the image of the Antichrist, which is counterfeit Israel, which is Zionism, what you see right now. That is going to reign during the Antichrist reign. That is what you're going to see. But during the time of great distress or great tribulation, what you're going to see is Jesus and his army, him coming like a thief. One will be taken and another left. Listen. The day of the Lord is coming. It is close at hand. A day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness, like dawn spreading across the mountains. A large army comes, such as never was in ancient times, nor will ever be in ages to come. God has established a pattern where he uses the wicked in order to bring wrath, but then he turns on them. And so there's another army that's going to come on them, you understand. And this is the army that is coming against them. Moreover, God could have said that the Antichrist reign was the time of great tribulation, which a lot of people preach. Most people preach, it seems. But that is not the time of great tribulation. That's after the time of great tribulation happens at the time that the abomination of desolation is set up, which is also called the idol that provokes to jealousy. Who is he making jealous? The idol that provokes to jealousy has incited God's jealous wrath, which is the reason he rises at that time. And so I've told you many times on this channel, you think the Antichrist reign is going to be bad? You have seen nothing yet. God has already told us that that when he rises, has not God created both prosperity and disaster, both good and evil? God has created evil, which means he's set the parameters around it and given it permission. But when God rises from his dwelling and his jealous wrath is incited, this is the time of great distress, such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until then. And there are certain things that are going to happen at this time. One's going to be taken and another left. He's coming like a thief. We also know that in the days just after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light and will turn to blood, and the stars will fall like figs from the sky. Okay, by the way, sun, moon, and stars also has been used figuratively all the way back to Genesis to represent the favored wife of Rachel, sun, moon, and stars. You remember Joseph had that dream where the sun, moon, and stars are going to bow down to you, and Jacob responds to him respectively and says, will your mother and I and your brothers really bow down to you? And in Revelation 12, what we understand from this is Rachel was the favored wife. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And the brothers represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And the light going out or turning to blood or falling is also representing their death. Because everyone is being killed. All of God's people are being martyred at that time. You see in Revelation that it says that the multitude in white robes came out of the great tribulation. You also see in Revelation 6 that the martyrs of the witnesses are under the altar of God, and they're crying out, how long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood? And they're told, wait a little longer until the full number of your brothers and sisters, not 80%, not 75%, not 90%, or even 99.9%. The full number of your brothers and sisters have been killed just as you have been. You should expect to be killed if you expect to go up in the resurrection. That's the bottom line. And if you don't know that, you will not be prepared for it and you won't pick it up. So listen to this statement. Like dawn spreading across the mountains, a large and mighty army comes, such as never was in ancient times, nor ever will be in ages to come. This is not talking about the Antichrist. This is talking about the army that God brings to take down the Antichrist, to bring judgment on the Antichrist. Before them, fire devours. Behind them, a flame blazes. Before them, the land is like the Garden of Eden. Behind them, a desert waste. Nothing escapes them. They have the appearance of horses. They gallop along like cavalry with a noise like that of chariots. They leap over the mountaintops like a crackling fire consuming stubble, like a mighty army drawn up for battle. At the sight of them, nations are in anguish. Every face turns pale. They charge like warriors. They scale walls like soldiers. They all march in line, not swerving from their course. They do not jostle each other. Each marches straight ahead. By the way, this is very similar right here to kind of the description that he uses with regard to the witnesses and the four living creatures in Ezekiel. They're staring straight ahead. You know, they go where the Lamb goes. They go where the Spirit goes. The Spirit is in the wheels. The wheels don't turn from the left to the right. You see what he's saying? They do not jostle each other. They all march in line, not swerving from their course. So, single-minded. They do not jostle each other. Each marches straight ahead. They plunge through defenses without breaking ranks. They rush upon the city. They rush along the wall. They climb into the houses like thieves. This language is used intentionally, and we need to pay attention to it. Like thieves, they enter through the windows. Before them, the earth shakes, the heavens tremble. Now listen to this language. The sun and moon are darkened, and the stars no longer shine. So pay attention to when it says, before them, this is what's going on. Behind them, this is what's going on. Because before them means they haven't gotten there yet. And behind them means they've already gone through there, and this is what's left. Before them the earth shakes and the heavens tremble, the sun and moon are darkened, and the stars no longer shine. The Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty is the army that obeys his command. The day of the Lord is great. It is dreadful. Who can endure it? Okay, this is the day of the Lord. This is when he comes like a thief. This is when he turns against the Antichrist. Even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart, not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate. But by the way, why does he say rend your heart, not your garments? Because people are like tearing at their garments, right? But that's what they did even into the New Testament. You saw Paul and Barnabas doing that. When they were grieved, they started to tear their garments. But this is something God wants from your heart. He doesn't want ritualistic, physical representations of what's supposed to be in your heart. He wants your heart. That doesn't mean that if he commands a physical representation that you don't do it, but this is what you're supposed to be doing in your heart. Rend your heart and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. Who knows? He may turn and relent and leave behind a blessing, grain offerings and drink offerings for the Lord your God. Blow the trumpet in Zion, declare a holy fast, call a sacred assembly, gather the people, consecrate the assembly, bring together the elders, gather the children, those nursing at the breast. Let the bridegroom leave his room and the bride her chamber. Let the priests who minister before the Lord weep between the portico and the altar. Let them say, spare your people, Lord. Do not make your inheritance an object of scorn, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their God? Then the Lord was jealous for his land and took pity on his people. Okay, so his people are actually going to be here. They've been here. God's wrath is going to pass over them, but they're also experiencing this time of great distress, such as has not happened since the beginning of the world until then. Then the Lord was jealous for his land and took pity on his people. The Lord replied to them, I'm sending you new grain, new wine and olive oil, enough to satisfy you fully. Never again will I make you an object of scorn to the nations. Well, when has he done that? During the Antichrist reign. And it's continuing in this time where they're being slaughtered by the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not reigning. The reign is ended. Still, though, he is still in power. And as it says, they're coming out of the Great Tribulation, so they're being killed at this time. Never again will I make you an object of scorn to the nations. I will drive the northern horde far from you, pushing it into a parched and barren land. Its eastern ranks will drown in the Dead Sea, and its western ranks in the Mediterranean Sea, and its stench will go up. Its smell will rise. Surely he has done great things. Do not be afraid, land of Judah. Be glad and rejoice. Surely the Lord has done great things. Do not be afraid, you wild animals, for the pastures in the wilderness are becoming green. The trees are bearing their fruit. The fig tree and the vine yield their riches. Be glad, people of Zion. Rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the autumn rains because he is faithful. He sends you abundant showers, both autumn and spring rains as before. By the way, this ain't happening during the time of great distress. This is happening after they've been martyred and later on. It's not going to happen while God is bringing this great wrath. It's not happening concurrently. The threshing floors will be filled with grain. The vats will... this is a promise, but it's a promise of what's going to happen because in those days, when the sun is darkened and the moon does not give its light and it turns to blood and the stars no longer shine and they fall from the sky to the earth, in those days, then will be the sign of the coming of the Son of Man. The threshing floors will be filled with grain. The vats will overflow with new wine and oil. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locusts and the young locusts, the other locusts and the locust swarm. My great army that I sent among you, you will have plenty to eat until you're full. And you will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has worked wonders for you. Never again will my people be shamed, and then you will know that I am in Israel, that I am the Lord your God, and that there is no other. Never again will my people be shamed. And afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, Your young men will see visions, even on my servants, both men and women. I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be deliverance, as the Lord has said, even among the survivors whom the Lord calls. Okay, 2 armies. 1 army, the Antichrist. The next army is worse than any army there ever has been and ever will be. That's the army God brings against the Antichrist army during this 45-day period, which begins his great wrath. Now, Revelation 9 is going to talk about the Antichrist army. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. That's Satan, losing his place in the heavenly realms. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like a gigantic furnace. What does it say in Revelation 11? It says that when he rises from the abyss, he will overpower and kill the witnesses. And he's going to do that through what? Many antichrists who are his antichrist kingdom. People, by the way, who say things like finish them, who worship this abomination in the Middle East that they're calling Israel. Israel are God's people. Israel are not an ethnic group. Israel is not coveting land that is supposed to be restored when Jesus comes. They're trying to get this, their own strength is their God, as the word says. They're trying to get their blessing that it's not even due to them. They obviously do not even believe in God, or they wouldn't be doing the things that they're doing. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. Okay, so the witnesses are being killed at this time. The witnesses, remember, the 144,000 were sealed before the first 4 trumpets blew. Why? Because when the 5th trumpet blows, Satan has lost his place in the heavenly realms. You see it right here. The 5th trumpet blew, and that star fell. So what's happening is that the witnesses, the 2 witnesses, as they are called, even though there are 144,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, these witnesses, their job was to establish a matter. That's what's required in God's law. 2 or more witnesses to establish a matter. And the matter that they're establishing is triumph over the devil. 2 things are required in Revelation 12 to triumph over the devil: the blood of the Lamb and the testimony of the witnesses. That's why Satan is angry, and he's given that power to reign, because they've killed his prophets, and because, as God says, I tried to cleanse you through the witnesses, by the way. I tried to cleanse you, but you wouldn't be clean. Therefore, you will not be clean again until my wrath against you has subsided. So, you're going to go into the Antichrist reign. We're judging the fruit here, okay? We're not judging what your lips say. We're judging the fruit. The fruit is, if you had returned to God, you would have been set apart for something. But you haven't. You don't obey him. There are some people who are described as the wise who are going to be instructing many. But I'm looking at the fruit. If you don't contact me to assemble with the body on holy days, new moons, Sabbaths, who are you assembling with? Are there so many people? Because I don't know anyone except my kids. So, and I have a platform here to connect with other people who are interested in this, and no one is interested in it. And the word already prophesied it. I'm judging the fruit. That's what I'm looking at. And don't say we're not allowed to judge, because you're actually commanded to discern, which is a form of judgment. We've not been given authority to condemn or to start talking about, like, this is the reason why this person does. You know how people like to do, especially in the field that I was in, like, take another person's inventory and start saying, oh, this is why they are the way that they are, and blah, blah, blah. The only thing God has told us is look at the fruit and test the spirit to see if the Spirit of God is in them. And so if we stop doing that, we won't get caught in these traps of trying to fix a person who's not fixable because they have the spirit of the devil in them. All right, out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of the scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Now, I told you what the symbolism is, okay? He's not literally talking about grass or plants or trees. He's talking about people. So don't harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. So they're not going to escape through death. They're going to be here. But notice that this is an army that's actually going after its own people. It's going after the people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads, the very people who receive its mark and worship it. That's ironic. So this is the image of the Antichrist, which in Revelation 13, we're told, is the persecuting power, and it's actually going after the kingdom to which it belongs. The very people that worship it. And it says elsewhere in Scripture that this is going to seem like a false omen to those who've sworn allegiance to it, but then it will remind them of their guilt. Verse 7. The locusts look like horses prepared for battle. Okay, this is often a description of just an army. Look like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold. A crown represents authority. And their faces resembled human faces. That's because they are. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lion's teeth. Okay, we read that description, by the way, of the lion's teeth in Joel. But let's sit for a minute and discern this one. Their hair was like women's hair. Paul already told us what women's hair signifies. A woman's hair is her covering, okay? That doesn't mean put on a covering. It means her hair is her covering. What do these people calling themselves Jews do? They put on a covering. Where does it say to do that in the Word? Does it say that you're supposed to put on a covering? Particularly for men, because, it's usually men who are wearing the covering. Women, in some Jewish circles, they're wearing wigs and stuff like that. And actually, there is a covering that I've seen them wearing where they kind of twist their hair up in it. I don't know what it's called. I don't really care, to be honest. But these are people who are wearing coverings. What does Paul say about what covers the man? Jesus is the head of the man. The man is the head of the woman. And the woman has been given this long hair as a covering. And Paul was saying this in reference to correcting and making clear that men are to have short hair. They are not to have long hair. That it's disgraceful for a man to have long hair. And that a woman is not to have short hair. She must have long hair. And he says her hair is her glory. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron. Now, elsewhere in Scripture, when talking about iron, such as in the book of Daniel, iron is referred to, is used interchangeably with Rome. We're told about what we are supposed to have as a breastplate. We wear a breastplate of righteousness, as Paul described in the book of Ephesians. These people have breastplates of iron. Rome. Where does our righteousness come from? It doesn't come from us. It comes from God. That's our breastplate. Their God, what they prostitute themselves to, is Rome. And I'll have you know that Saturday was never God's Sabbath. Saturday doesn't exist in the Bible because it came from the Romans. That's a prostitution to the Romans. And God's calendar, he doesn't have two calendars, he has one. One calendar that he established with Moses based on Passover. Based on that month and what we were to, and still are to observe with regard to Passover. Well, they have two calendars, an additional calendar that they added so that they could have a new year just like the rest of the world, that they call Rosh Hashanah, which technically should be the Festival of Trumpets because it's the first of the 7th month, which they also call Tishrei. So they're also prostituting themselves to Babylon because Tishrei is not the name God used for his 7th month. He used Ethanim. Tishrei is a Babylonian name. So they claim that there's an Exodus calendar and a creation calendar. The creation calendar begins in the 7th month with Rosh Hashanah, their counterfeit New Year, so they can be just like the rest of the world. I mean, look, that's the first day of the month. It's supposed to be a rest day. New moon is a rest day, guys. So why are they observing New Year, according to the world, on a rest day? But see, the word has already told us, like in Hosea 2:11, that they lost God's calendar. So I hear people say all the time, oh, the Jews have been, they've been taking care of God's calendar all this time. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. And the word told us that they wouldn't. So are you prostituting yourself to people who prostitute themselves? Because you're supposed to be receiving your gospel from the word and his spirit. These people worship a false god. This is their false god. Rome is their false god. Now, what did Rome start? Rome established counterfeit religion. Counterfeit Christians prostituted themselves to it, and counterfeit Jews prostituted themselves to it. And in the book of Daniel, it says that these people, the Antichrist, this persecuting power of the Antichrist, the image of counterfeit Israel, the image of the Antichrist, that they're going to receive help from a false god. That's what they're wearing on their breastplate, is the false god of papal Rome. That's what is helping them. That's what's assisting them in what's going to be certainly the greatest genocide there ever was. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails like stingers, like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is, destroyer. The first woe is past, the other 2 woes are yet to come. Why is this the first woe? Because they have killed his prophets for the last time. They are the ones who kill his witnesses. That is the Antichrist reign. But I want you to notice that during the first 5 months, the very first people that they go after, that the image of the Antichrist goes after, are in its own kingdom, are the very people who worship it, who don't have the seal of God. He doesn't immediately go after God's people. Well, he immediately goes after the witnesses, but he doesn't immediately go after you. He goes after those in his own kingdom. That's the first 5 months. The remainder of that 42 months, he will be going after you. The wise will be instructing many, as is written in Daniel 11. And then on the 1290th day, as is written in Daniel 12, the abomination of desolation will be set up. The Antichrist reign is going to end. Why is the reign going to end? The reign is going to end because God's jealous wrath is incited, and when God is reigning, the Antichrist is not reigning. So now God is the one reigning, but just because God is the one reigning doesn't mean that the Antichrist is not in power, because the Antichrist will still be killing God's people during that time. Now think about this from the perspective of papal Rome. Remember that Revelation 17 tells us that the Antichrist was, now is not, but is yet to come, and will rise is going to rise from the abyss. So it's already been here. So we don't have to look that far, but we do have to understand that the kingdom that papal Rome established now includes the prostitutes that bore out of her, those who continue in her prostitutions. It also includes the false prophet, and it includes the image of the Antichrist. And the image of the Antichrist is actually the persecuting power, as we see in Revelation 13. You don't have to look that far to know what it's going to do. And you also don't have to look that far to recognize that just because its reign has stopped and someone else is reigning, has taken over that power, it doesn't mean that the Catholic Church hasn't had power. It's had power this whole time. It just hasn't been reigning. And so here's what you need to understand. During that time of great distress, that 45-day period, the Antichrist is still going to have power. It's still going to be killing God's people. It's just not going to be reigning. But also, God is bringing an army against this Antichrist. So if you can imagine that, if you can imagine the kind of chaos that's going to ensue as God is bringing great wrath on the Antichrist, but the Antichrist is also bringing its wrath on God's people. It is going to be a time of great distress, and the light is going to go out in the favored wife, Israel, and the 12 tribes of Israel, of God's people, of his church, because they're going to be killed. But then, soon after that, the resurrection will take place, and Jesus will restore the land, which he has likened to us, he will restore us. Please discern this message with God.